want to talk about something that lives in the quiet corners of our lives. It shows up in the silence after we fail, in the hesitation before we speak, in the moments when we're scrolling through social media, wondering why everyone else seems to have it figured out but us. Let's name it unworthiness. We don't talk about it because it's uncomfortable. But it's there. It's that voice whispering, "You're not enough. And you don't belong." It's if they really knew you. But here's the truth. The real truth, you don't feel unworthy because there's something wrong with you. You feel unworthy because you've been taught to hustle for your worth since the moment you could walk. You were taught that love is earned, not given, that achievement equals value, that perfection is the price of belonging, and we believed it, all of us. Because when you're a kid and you reach for connection and someone tells you, be quiet, be good, be smaller, what you hear is when you, as you aren't lovable. That's the birthplace of shame. And y'all, shame is the greediest emotion we have. It tells us to armor up, to hide the messy parts, to pretend. But what it never tells us is that we're already enough. We've always been enough. Worthiness is not something you earn. It's something you own. And you reclaim it not by proving yourself, but by being yourself. So here's my invitation to you. Let's stop trying to deserve love and start practicing being worthy of it. Let's stop chasing perfection and start embracing wholeness. And for the love of all things, let's start telling each other the truth about what it means to be human. Because when you speak shame, it loses its power. When you choose courage over comfort, the world shifts. And when you stand in your story, even the messy chapters, that's when you rise. Not when you're flawless, not when you're finished, but when you're real. And that, my friends, is where worthiness lives. Let's start with a radical idea that shouldn't feel radical at all. You weren't born feeling unworthy. Not one of us came into this world thinking we were less than. Babies don't question their value. They don't apologize for their needs or their noise or their joy. They don't hold back their laughter or shrink their personalities. They show up fully, instinctively, beautifully themselves. We are born whole, worthy, belonging, every single one of us. So what happens? Why do we wake up one day, maybe at age 6 or 16 or 36, and suddenly feel like we're not good enough? Where does that voice come from that whispers, "You're too much," or "You'll never be enough"? Here's what I've learned after 2 decades of research, thousands of stories, and my own hard-earned healing. Unworthiness is something we absorb. We are not born with it, we're taught it. And more often than not, we're taught it subtly, quietly, even lovingly, which is part of what makes it so hard to unlearn. It starts in moments that seem small. Maybe it's a parent, overwhelmed and exhausted, snapping as "Stop crying, you're fine." Maybe it's a teacher saying, "And you'd be so much easier to teach if you just paid attention." Maybe it's being left out of a birthday party or hearing someone you look up to say, "Orange, you've got to toughen up if you want to make it." None of these things seem big, but to a child, especially a sensitive one, they're seismic. What we hear isn't just the words, it's the story behind them. We start to believe that our emotions are too much, our needs are inconvenient, and our authentic selves are somehow wrong. And when that message is repeated over time in different ways by different people in different places, it begins to form a narrative, a story about who we are and what we're worth. And the most dangerous thing about these stories, we don't even realize we're telling them. They live under the surface, buried deep, guiding our choices, our relationships, our dreams. "I'm not lovable. So I have to earn affection. So if I mess up, I'll be abandoned." These beliefs don't come out of nowhere. They're survival strategies we build in environments where being ourselves didn't feel safe. And because these stories are so deeply embedded, we carry them into adulthood. We bring them into our friendships, our marriages, our careers. We walk into rooms already feeling like we don't belong. We overachieve to prove we're enough. We undershare because we're terrified of being truly seen. We become perfectionists, chameleons, caretakers, avoiders, not because we're flawed, but because at some point those roles helped us feel just a little bit more secure. And even though they exhaust us, we cling to them, because letting them go feels like stepping out without armor. But y'all, here's the truth that can change everything. The beliefs you carry about your worthiness aren't yours. They were handed to you by systems that profit off your insecurity, by adults who hadn't healed their own wounds, by cultures that celebrate fitting in more than standing out. And once you start to see that, you get to ask a different question. Not what's wrong with me, but and who told me that I had to earn love? Not why am I not enough, but when did I start believing I wasn't? And I know that this is tender work. It's uncomfortable to peel back the layers and realize that so much of our self-image was shaped by things we couldn't control. But that discomfort, that's not weakness, that's awakening. That's what healing looks like. Because when we begin to trace the roots of our unworthiness, we start to untangle ourselves from it. And here's what I want to say loud and clear. To the part of you that still wonders if maybe, just maybe, you're the exception. There is nothing wrong with you. Feeling unworthy doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. It means you were shaped by a world that sometimes forgets how to see people as whole. And yes, it takes courage to unlearn all of that. It takes guts to look at the story you've been told and say, no more. But I promise you, the moment you start questioning that old story is the moment you start rewriting it. If unworthiness is the seed, shame is the soil it grows in. It's the silent partner of every I'm not enough narrative. It's the force behind the fear of being seen. It's what makes us flinch at compliments, shrink from connection, and second guess whether we deserve to be in the room. Shame isn't just about doing something wrong. Shame is the deep, painful belief that we are something wrong. And when we believe that, we don't just feel unworthy, we become afraid of being found out. Shame is incredibly powerful because it's invisible. It doesn't announce itself boldly. It sneaks in. It wears disguises. Sometimes it shows up as silence, that tightness in your throat when you want to speak up, but the voice in your head says, don't say too much. Other times it shows up as overcompensating, the need to be perfect, to please, to control every outcome so you don't risk being judged. Shame doesn't always say, bunch you're bad. Often it says, be careful, don't let them see the real you. What makes shame so toxic is that it thrives in secrecy. The less we talk about it, the more power it has. That's why shame is so hard to recognize in ourselves. We feel the effects, the anxiety, the fear of failure, the exhaustion from trying to prove we're okay, but we rarely name the root. But underneath all of that is often a story shaped by shame, a story that says, if I were truly seen, I'd be rejected. And here's where it gets complicated. Shame is often confused with guilt, but they're not the same. Guilt says, said, did something bad. Shame says, am bad. Guilt can be productive. It invites accountability and change, but shame doesn't invite healing. Shame shuts the door. It says, you're broken and you better hide it. And the longer we hide, the more disconnected we feel from others, from ourselves, from any real sense of belonging. Over time, this disconnection becomes a kind of inner exile. We start to edit our personalities to fit what we think is acceptable. We wear masks, we shape-shift, we only show the polished, filtered, curated versions of ourselves. And then we wonder why we feel alone. But here's the catch. You can't feel loved if you don't feel seen. And you can't feel seen if you're constantly hiding. Shame tells us to dim our light, but it never tells us the cost of that dimming. We also inherit shame from culture, from family, from systems. We're told what it means to be I'd enough, thin enough, successful enough, masculine enough, feminine enough, strong enough. When we don't meet those standards, shame steps in and says, TC, I told you, you don't belong. And when those standards are wrapped in identity, race, gender, sexuality, ability, shame becomes even more dangerous. It becomes institutional, generational. It doesn't just live in our hearts, it lives in our history. So when you feel unworthy, when you find yourself questioning your value, when you hear that voice that says, who do you think you are? That's not a personal failing. That's shame doing what shame does best, isolating, silencing, and convincing you that you're alone in your pain. But the truth is, you're not alone. Shame is universal. We all carry it. The difference isn't who feels it, the difference is who talks about it. And the minute we start naming shame out loud in the light, it starts to lose its grip. Somewhere along the way, we started tying our self-worth to how much we produce. We stopped believing we had value just because we exist and started believing we had to earn it. And the way we earn it in this culture, through achievement, through gold stars, degrees, promotions, applause, followers, flawless skin, the right job title, the curated life. From the time we're little, we're handed a script, do more, be more, prove more, then maybe you'll be enough. The tragedy is that it works. Not because we feel more worthy, but because the world claps. You get the A, you get the award, you get the "you're so impressive" nods. And for a moment, it feels like love. But it's not love, it's approval. And approval is conditional. Approval is fragile. You have to keep earning it, again and again. And when it slips, as it always does, you're left wondering if you were ever truly seen, or if people only loved what you could do. It's a brutal way to live, chasing your worth, like it's always just one accomplishment away. You keep thinking the next thing will fix it. If I just get that promotion, I'll feel secure. If I just hit that goal weight, I'll feel confident. If I just prove myself one more time, maybe I'll finally stop feeling like a fraud. But the truth is, the finish line keeps moving, the applause fades, the inbox fills up again, the achievement high wears off, and you're left with that familiar ache. Why do I still feel not enough? Because value isn't something you can hustle for. It's not something you can earn through merit badges and busy calendars. Your value is intrinsic. It's in you, not in your resume. We've built a culture that doesn't know how to honor that. We celebrate the grind, we admire people who are always on, and we quietly judge those who rest. We've made achievement the altar and sacrificed ourselves on it. It doesn't just affect how we see ourselves, it affects how we see each other. We start measuring people's worth by what they do, not who they are. We dismiss the stay-at-home parent, we overlook the janitor, we underestimate the person without the degree, and worse, we internalize it. We start believing we're only lovable when we're successful, and when we're not, when we fail, when we fall, when we're just surviving, we feel invisible, disposable, ashamed. I've interviewed hundreds of people who were outwardly successful but inwardly empty. CEOs, surgeons, artists, athletes, people who had climbed every ladder but still felt like imposters at the top. Do you know what they all said? That no matter how much they achieved, they never felt like it was enough. And more than that, they never felt like they were enough, because they were taught to believe that value is performance-based, that love is tied to doing, not being. The most radical truth we can reclaim is this: you are valuable simply because you exist, not because of your productivity, not because of your performance, not because of your perfection, just because you are human. Worthiness is your birthright, not your business card. And until we start untangling achievement from identity, we'll keep confusing being impressive with being whole. We all have armor, every single one of us. Not the shiny kind, not the kind you see in movies, but emotional armor. Invisible, heavy, and incredibly smart. It shows up early, sometimes in childhood, sometimes in adolescence, always with a purpose. To protect us from pain. The moment we felt exposed, the first time we were laughed at, abandoned, misunderstood, criticized, our bodies and brains did something remarkable. They said, never again. And that's when the armor started to build. The thing about armor is that it's brilliant. It works. Perfectionism, people-pleasing, pretending, these aren't character flaws. They're strategies. They're the ways we try to stay safe in a world that has hurt us. When you grow up learning that love can be withdrawn, or that failure equals rejection, or that vulnerability is dangerous, you learn to adapt. You learn to anticipate everyone else's needs before your own. You learn to polish the rough edges. You learn to perform. And all of that becomes protection. But here's the cost, and it's a high one. When we armor up to avoid pain, we also block connection, because you can't selectively numb emotions. You can't build walls to keep out rejection without also keeping out belonging. You can't hide your shame and still be fully seen. The armor that once saved you begins to isolate you. It becomes less of a shield and more of a cage. You end up walking through life disconnected, not just from others, but from your own truth. Perfectionism is one of the heaviest armors of all. It tells us, if I can just do everything right, they won't have a reason to criticize me, they'll accept me. But perfectionism is not self-improvement. It's not striving for excellence. It's a defense mechanism. It's the 24-hour guard we post at the door of our soul, hoping to never let anyone see us sweat. Then there's people-pleasing, the quiet shape-shifting of the self. You become whatever someone else needs you to be so you won't be rejected. You say yes when you mean no. You swallow your needs, your opinions, your instincts, because the fear of disappointing someone outweighs the fear of losing yourself. And over time, you start to forget who you actually are. Your sense of identity gets wrapped up in being liked, being needed, being agreeable. But here's the truth: being liked is not the same as being loved. Some of us armor up with cynicism. We pretend we don't care. We detach. We make jokes, roll our eyes, or act aloof because it feels safer than admitting how much we long to be seen. Vulnerability feels like a threat, so we turn down the volume on our hearts. But deep down, we're still feeling everything. We're just burying it under layers of sarcasm, distraction, or busyness. And what we don't feel, we can't heal. What we numb, we can't transform. And here's the most important truth: the armor was never the problem. It was necessary. It served you. It got you through times when being soft wasn't an option. But the version of you that built that armor isn't the version of you who has to wear it forever. You get to outgrow it. You get to say, thank you for protecting me. And now, I choose something different. Because courage isn't about never feeling fear. Courage is about taking the armor off, piece by piece, and trusting that your wholeness is strong enough to hold the weight of your story. We spend so much of our lives trying to fit in, thinking that if we can just tweak a little here, silence a little there, edit ourselves just enough, we'll finally feel like we belong. We'll finally be accepted. So we adapt. We become fluent in reading the room. We laugh at jokes that don't land in our spirit. We say yes when we mean maybe or no. We rehearse our words before we speak, filter our photos before we post, and hide the messy, raw, complicated parts of us that don't feel safe to show. And the whole time, we're hoping this is it. This is what belonging feels like. But it's not. That's not belonging. That's performing. That's auditioning. That's adjusting who you are in exchange for approval. Belonging doesn't ask you to shrink. Belonging doesn't require you to betray yourself. Fitting in is about becoming who others want you to be. Belonging is about being fully who you are and being embraced because of it, not in spite of it. And here's the thing: the more you hustle to fit in, the further you drift from your true self. And the further you drift, the lonelier it gets, even in a crowded room. We've confused proximity with connection. We think if we're invited, if we're included, if we're surrounded by people, then we must be okay. But inclusion doesn't always mean intimacy. Being liked isn't the same as being loved. And there's this quiet ache that comes with being liked for a version of yourself that you've curated. Because deep down, they don't really see you. They see the mask. And it's terrifying to wonder, if I took off this mask, would they still want me here? That fear is what keeps us stuck in patterns of conformity. We swallow our truth to keep the peace. We stay silent when something feels off. We agree even when our gut screams otherwise. And we call it loyalty, we call it professionalism, we call it maturity. But often it's fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being rejected, fear of being too much or not enough. But the more we contort ourselves to fit in, the more we abandon the parts of us that actually make us whole. Real belonging, the deep soul-level kind, only happens when we stop trying to be chosen by others and choose ourselves first. It's vulnerable, yes. It's messy and uncertain, and often comes with grief. Because when you stop fitting in, some people will fall away. Some rooms will no longer feel like home. But that loss creates space for something far more sacred, authenticity. And authenticity is the birthplace of true belonging. We all have stories we don't tell. Stories that sit heavy in our chest, stories we've folded and tucked away somewhere in the corner of our memory, like old letters we're too afraid to read again. Or sometimes it's because we were told, directly or indirectly, that our story didn't matter, or that it was too much, too messy, too dark, too emotional. So we learned to go quiet, to keep it light, to focus on what's palatable, what's easy to digest, what won't make anyone uncomfortable. And somewhere along the way, that silence became a habit, a shield, a way of surviving. But when we silence our stories, we don't just stay safe, we stay small. The parts of us we keep hidden don't disappear, they just fester. They live beneath the surface, coloring how we show up in the world, whispering to us in moments of doubt. That trauma we never named, it shapes how we trust. That rejection we never talked about, it shapes how we connect. That failure we buried deep, it shapes how we see our worth. We think we're keeping the peace by staying silent, but what we're really doing is holding our breath, waiting for permission to be whole. There's a myth we've internalized that says vulnerability is dangerous, that sharing the truth of our lived experience will make people pull away, that we'll be labeled dramatic, weak, needy, or broken. And so we water ourselves down. We become fluent in the language of half-truths. We use humor to deflect. We change the subject, or we say, it's fine when it's anything but. But here's the thing, your story doesn't become less powerful because you don't tell it. It becomes more powerful. Silence doesn't protect you from shame. It fuels it. What I've learned from years of research is this: the stories we are most afraid to tell are often the ones that connect us the most deeply. Because when someone says, a me too, to a part of your story you thought made you unlovable, something in you softens, something in you begins to heal. But we can't get to that moment of connection if we keep locking our stories behind doors labeled "in not safe." If we want belonging, if we want freedom, we have to be brave enough to speak. Now, I'm not talking about oversharing. Vulnerability isn't about dumping your trauma on the table and hoping someone else will clean it up. It's not about exposure, it's about intention. Telling your story with courage means telling it from a place of self-awareness, not from a need to be rescued. It means knowing that your story is yours, not to be approved of, but to be owned, to be honored, to be integrated. It means asking, what would it look like to share this part of me with someone who's earned the right to hear it? And yes, some people won't know what to do with your story. Some will shrink from your pain. Some will minimize it. That's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their capacity. And that's why discernment matters. You don't have to tell your story to everyone, but you owe it to yourself not to bury it. Because when we leave parts of ourselves unspoken, we send ourselves a message that those parts are shameful, that they're dangerous, that they're not welcome. And over time, we start to believe that we are not welcome. Your story is not a liability. It's your power. It's your roots. It's the road you walked and the bridge you built to get here. Every scar, every setback, every stumble, it's proof that you've lived and that you've kept going. And when you find the courage to tell your story, first to yourself and then to others, you begin to reclaim all the pieces of you that shame tried to silence. Because the truth is, you don't have to hide to be safe. You don't have to stay small to be loved. You are allowed to be seen, fully and without apology. So here's what I want to leave you with. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not unworthy because of your past, your pain, your imperfections, or the ways you've armored up to survive. You are human, and being human is messy, it's vulnerable, it's uncertain. But it's also where all the beauty lives. It's where connection happens. It's where love takes root. And it's where your real power begins. You don't need to wait for permission to take up space in your own life. You don't have to prove anything to belong. You don't have to keep hiding, hustling, or holding your breath. You're allowed to be seen. You're allowed to tell the truth. You're allowed to take the armor off piece by piece and come home to yourself. Because the truth is, worthiness is not something out there waiting for you to catch up to it. It's already here. It's in your breath, your bravery, your story. It's in every time you choose to show up with your whole heart, shaky voice, trembling hands and all. That's not weakness. That's courage. This isn't about becoming someone new. This is about remembering who you were before the world told you who you had to be. It's about reclaiming the truth that's always been yours. You are enough. You have always been enough. And you are worthy of love, belonging, and joy, not someday, but right now. So take a breath, stand in your truth, and walk forward, not perfectly, but courageously, because your story matters, and you matter, always.